Carl Sagan, who was kind of a mainstream man in so many ways, he wrote this book, The Dragons of Eden, about the reptilian connection to humanity and human genetics, and he says in there was the effect to understand the human's reptilian characteristics is to understand so much about human behavior. Quite right. It's in the DNA, the hard drive, which has been put in there. Now, one of the hardest things that people have to understand, and I completely appreciate it, is this idea of shape-shifting. Now, it's an ancient thing in terms of accounts all over the world, not just shape-shifting between human and reptilian, but shape-shifting between human and many different forms, animal forms, etc. And people perceive it, because we're so locked into this reality is real, as like a physical, solid human body transforming into a solid reptilian body and then back again. Because I've spoken to people all over the world, in vast numbers now, who have seen this phenomenon of seeing someone, a human, suddenly transform into a reptilian figure and then come back again. And the ancient accounts talk about the same thing. And people think, hey, it's impossible, mate. How can a body change into another body? I mean, the person would die, wouldn't they? Well, that's not what's happening. As we talked about in the first half, the only place that the physical reptilian form and the physical human form exist is in here, when their energetic form is decoded into a holographic, apparently physical form. So when something's shape-shifting, it shifts in the decoding mechanism by which we decode different energy fields. It's literally like changing a television channel. You've got the human field, which is obscuring the reptilian field, because they hide behind the human field, so we don't know what the hell's going on. And if I'm observing the human field, that's the prime field that I'm decoding, I will see a human. But if this becomes the prime field, suddenly, for whatever reason, I'm now decoding the reptilian field, the reptilian energy field. What is happening in my decoded system in my mind is I'm seeing a human physical form, reptilian physical form, human physical. Did you see that? The bloke's just changed into a bloody lizard. So it's in the decoding that shape-shifting takes place. Because there is no physical form out there. It's in here. That's where it all goes on. And this movement of energy fields is where we get confused, and it's where the decoding mechanism makes us think that very strange things are going on.
Cuba, when I did the last talk, a guy came to me at the break who'd been on the protest at Seattle against globalization, when the agents provocateurs were sent in to cause trouble, which the cameras shot, and was blamed on the protesters who up to that point had been perfectly peaceful. This is what happens, agents provocateurs, problem, reaction, solution. And this is a guy who, you know, believes in Jesus and all that stuff, which if he wants to do that, that's great. But the point is, you know, he wasn't some way out guy who smokes a weed or something and has visions. And he was arrested and taken to the police station. And in the police station, when he was being held down and the sergeant came over, he said the sergeant shape-shifted in front of him, turned into a reptile, and then came back to human, and then shape-shifted again and returned. So then when you talk to insiders, and when you look back at the texts that talk about the fact that this serpent race exists in planes unknown to man, just outside his frequency range, then there is a gathering mass of evidence that this is going on. And, you know, again, people who dismiss it without question, without research, and without reading further about it, they're not making a statement about me. They're making a statement about themselves. The idea that they can come to definite conclusions about something without even looking at it. I mean, excuse me? And you claim to be in control of your own mind. So it's not my job to dissuade them. I don't want to dissuade them. But the point is, there's a gathering mass of evidence to support it. And what I was going to say is, you know, you talk to physicists, and even within this frequency range, this narrow frequency range that we can access, that we call the universe, we can only see about 10% of the matter that exists in this universe. We can only see matter that reflects light. Luminous matter, they call it. Dark matter that doesn't reflect light in a way that we can perceive it, we can't see. So, you look at the fantastic diversity of genetics and expressions of life that we can see in this tiny 10% and less of this one little frequency range, then you kind of think outside of this frequency range is infinity. If entities had not evolved through the reptilian stream, when you look at the unbelievable diversity of the reptilian species in this tiny little 10% of the universe that we can see, in this little frequency range, then it's not that it's fantastic that this species could throw up a form that is humanoid and has an intellectual intelligence. It's actually staggering if it had not done so. I spoke at this conference in America, and I talked to this guy who ran a magazine, and he was a real straight Christian patriot guy, not into all this, you know, stuff. But and he said to me, you know, I like your stuff. He said, I like all your political stuff and all your secret societies. He said, but I have a real problem with this reptilian thing, right? And this shape-shifting. He said, I can't get my head around that. I said, fair enough, not a problem. Just take what you like and leave the rest, don't matter. So anyway, the next day, I'll walk into the area where he is, and everyone's in the conference listening to somebody, and so the room's empty. He said, oh, God, I've got to talk to you. He said, I told you. He said, last night, he said, I met this man who had a real problem with me because of something I did that he didn't like, something I wrote he didn't like. He said, and he got angry and angry and angry, and he was screaming, you know, kind of totally lost it. He said, and the hotel manager came over and said, look, hey, can you take this elsewhere, please? You're upsetting the other customers. So he thought, I'm out of here. I can't take this anymore. And he went to the elevator. And as the elevator doors were closing, this guy, still at it, comes in the elevator, right in his face, get absolutely livid. And he said he shapeshifted in front of me. So he was then much more open to the fact that this is no illusion. This is conditioned to believe that people manifest and entities manifest as like human bodies, because that's the conditioned mind reacting. And I understand that, but any conditioned mind that says, I am not going to look at the evidence, I'm just going to dismiss it because it is so different, is a conditioned mind that is unbelievable.